The Buffalo Bills are coming to Denver. The Broncos last beat the Bills here behind Peyton Manning as he held off Kyle Orton. We're also going to talk about the NFL coaching carousel, and are the Nuggets going to have to pay Peyton? Time for another edition of After the Horn. Tom Green, Woody Paige, Ron Zappolo, MIA. Where is Ron Zappolo?
When I was working with the late Herb Brown, he would always say, if I was out of town, he'd say, he's on assignment.
Yeah. Or on something.
Ron is he's on tequila.
Hopefully Ron's having a nice week off here as we get into the playoffs on After the Horn. First, I want to thank our friends at Furniture Row once again. They stepped up and gave us all this beautiful furniture to jazz up our studio and make it so that it's comfortable even when Ron's not here. Woody, the Bills, are they the Broncos' worst nightmare coming to town? It seemed like there were other teams the Broncos might have wanted to play aside from the Bills.
Interesting. I had posted on social media the 6 teams that were in the playoffs against that they could face during, and I thought the Texans were the toughest team they could face in the AFC, and I had the Chargers at the bottom of being the one that, if I were the Broncos, I'd want to see them again. Because I don't think as much of Herbert as a lot of people do, and he didn't play extremely well in the game. But I had the Buffalo Bills about midway of it. I think this is going to be a difficult game for them, because of one guy.
Yeah.
We all know who that is. But I keep hearing from people that Sean Payton's going to out-coach
Sean McDermott.
McDermott. The problem with that is that Sean Payton hasn't, even though he's a candidate for Coach of the Year, we have sat here and watched him for 18 weeks, and we're a little confused about how great a coach he's been this season. When you go back to the exhibition season, when he had the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach both calling plays and doing a better job. That was in the preseason. So I'm concerned about Sean Payton more than I'm concerned about Bo Nix.
Well, the Broncos' offense will be brought to the challenge because they're going to face a Buffalo defense that will allow you to get going if you get going. And they're going to have to do that a bit. But we've seen also, when you look at the other teams advancing in the AFC, I mean, what Houston did to Pittsburgh, what New England did as well, I mean, they're very impressive defensive games. The Broncos have that defense that lives in that league, and they're going to have a tougher time playing like that. You know, they have the week off and all, but Josh Allen is a unique problem.
Yeah, I examined all the teams prior to the weekend, and you could see the feeling that defenses were going to control the AFC, and the NFC would have more offensive teams than defensive teams. And I found that interesting when I was looking at that, saying, is that going to continue? And we've really seen it. We didn't see it last night in terms of especially one team, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No.
But they weren't noted for having a great defensive team throughout the season. They struggled, and they also didn't.
It wouldn't have mattered the way their offense was being manhandled by the Texans. So Josh Allen's an interesting proposition, I think, for the Broncos, because if you look at the 3 games that the Broncos lost this year, mobile quarterbacks were part of the problem. You know, it was Daniel Jones got him, Justin Herbert got him, and then at the end of the year, Trevor Lawrence got him. Those are the 3 wins. Those weren't guys running all over the field, running for 75 yards, but they present that problem as a defense where you end up having to be cautious a bit with how you rush the quarterback and not provide him with escape routes. Josh Allen's better than all those guys at getting out in the field and running
put together
or making plays. Yeah, but even some of the games they won against mobile quarterbacks, they struggled. Jackson Dart, Marcus Mariota gave him a hard time. You look at the issues that mobile running threat quarterback gave the Broncos, So they have all these games that they can look at and figure out what they might want to do with Josh Allen. But Josh Allen is the preeminent dual threat quarterback in the league. Maybe he and Lamar Jackson.
And offensively, I think you've got to be concerned about the running game. The Bills will give up a lot of yardage on the ground if you can produce that. Can the Broncos, given that Dobbins is
not, I don't think
he's not going to play here.
Yeah.
He might play in the Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, I think that's about the only chance he really has. But if they were to get that far, but can the 2-3 young running backs? One is used as a wide receiver,
right,
or
third down
guy that you use on third down. But can they do the job on the ground? And truthfully, Peyton has tried to develop that running game, Tom, over and over and over again, and he's not able to do it. Can Bo Nix not compete with Josh Allen, but can he have a good game like he did, say, against Dallas, which had the worst defense in the league? Can he also do what Josh Allen does, and that's beat you with your feet? That not only with his arm, but with his feet, because Josh Allen is going to go for quarterback sneaks for 9 yards.
the power tush push.
So that's the question. They don't compete against each other. We always say, it's this quarterback against the other quarterback. But we saw last night a quarterback have the worst playoff game maybe in history, and yet his team won the game.
He fumbled the ball 5 times. They only lost, I think, 2 or 3.
Yeah, Stroud was just terrible.
And they won the game going away.
Yeah, so I look at this game as being close. I look at it as there being a lot of points. I don't know what the 47.5, I think, is the over-under. I think that both teams are going to score in the high 20s at least.
Well, that would seem to favor the Bills. They would prefer to be playing in the 20s. The Broncos would like to see the game, or at least the Bills stay in the teens, in order to make that offense work.
Well, let me ask you a question that I normally don't ask you questions. I answer questions, but all I keep hearing from the people in Denver, and you and I both talked to, I've always said that Denver is the largest major city that's a town. We talk about Jacksonville, Sean Payton does, saying, it's a small market.
Right.
Denver is still a small market as far as I look at it, with 2.5 million
as far
people.
as a vibe.
Yeah, because you talk to people all the time, and everybody's friendly enough to talk. And everybody here, the crowd's going to make a difference. Well, the crowd will make a difference if you're in the game. We saw in the game against the Chargers, the crowd was in it against the Broncos. They were booing Bo. They were booing Sean Payton. They were booing the entire offense. That I don't think the crowd is going to make a major difference in this game.
They'll be ready to go, I'm sure. The Bronco crowd is famous for being participatory, to say the least, but it is symbiotic. The team has to create energy, then the crowd can create energy, and then it can become a positive cycle. But if you're boring the fans with your offense, and the game is, you're down, 10-3 and you're doing nothing on offense, the crowd will get a little quieter than they want it. But that home field advantage can be big. You just look at it nowadays, the way teams rush the passer, the advantage that Cooper and Benito get, knowing that those offensive tackles are just going to have to wait a second, half a second. That's all it takes. So the Broncos will have to take advantage of it. The Bo Nix, Josh Allen comparison, contrast as to how they play, I think may be very well determined, like you said, about how the Broncos run the ball, but also how well the Broncos prevent James Cook from running the ball. He's had a super year for Buffalo, and he's a handful, and they're going to have to force the Bills to play from behind the chains as often as they can, get him into second and third and long.
I think I'm correct that he has had the most yardage by a running back this year. And the Broncos, if you pull all 4 or 5 of them that have rushed the football, don't compete with that. I also think that there is a factor that Josh Allen has played at altitude. He played at Wyoming at altitude. I pointed out on what I call Twitter that he and his offensive coordinator used to come to Cherry Creek all the time to go shopping because there was no place in Laramie to go shopping. And his offensive coordinator said, we come down to Denver on a regular basis. So he knows Denver. not from the shopping, but he spent enough time in this area to know about crowds. He went to games when he was in college.
Yeah.
He really wanted to play for the Denver Broncos.
Why didn't he? I was trying to remember what happened there. There was something about they might have drafted him.
Yeah, and I don't think the defensive coordinator had much to do with it, but he coached him in the Senior Bowl. And
you mean Bradley Chubb or Josh Allen?
Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And John Elway made that decision. John said it was the worst mistake he made, being general manager, vice president of football operations. And it amazed me, and we kind of talked about this last week, it amazed me that John looked in the eyes of a guy that was basically John Elway.
Similar, very similar
in
product.
terms of energy, in terms of he didn't have the arm that John Elway had at his time, but he would take off and run. And I still to this day haven't figured out why, other than I was told that it was because of his passing percentage.
Right, his inaccuracy, his rawness.
Yeah.
They didn't see a sure thing that he certainly
Well, see,
is.
John Elway, for instance, John Elway was 4-year starter at Stanford. He was the number 1 draft pick. People thought Josh Allen, who was a guy that was recruited by nobody but junior colleges, that really he didn't have the resume.
Well, and the teams he was playing against, they weren't feeling like he was playing against what
But he's
would
proven
be.
that out to be wrong, and he is the defending MVP.
So that he was the defending MVP last year when they waxed the Broncos in the playoffs, and you think of how we've come a calendar year more or less, and now the Broncos not favored at all at this point. I think they're 1.5 underdogs still, but it's like the way the shoe has gone to the other foot in this game's matchup. The Broncos now the home team. The Broncos got the number 1 seed. I mean, last year it was no contest in Buffalo, and here we are a year later, and it seems like it's very much a contest. And the Broncos, people here think are gonna beat the Bills.
What do you think is the X factor? I've heard that question asked, but I think it works in this situation. What do you think is going to be the difference in the game?
He's got an X in his name. It's Bo Nix. It's Bo Nix. I mean, the Bo Nix who played against the Packers, that was the best I'd seen him play as a pro. When he would move through the pocket, he was moving with his head up. He was able to throw on the move. He was delivering the ball. He threw the ball so accurately against the Packers. Since then, it hasn't been as pretty a thing. And so I think this game will come down to, because Bo Nix, it'll be asked of him, or at least the Broncos' offense outside of the traditional running game. They'll bubble screen and all that quasi-running game stuff. But as far as actually pushing the ball down the field and making Buffalo have to play a larger box, it'll be Bo Nix.
Temperatures will probably be in the 40s, high 40s.
Let's check the map here. You can see that we have a cold front moving through.
Yeah, it's going to be worse next week. If they actually play another week, there's a storm coming.
January may eventually arrive in Colorado, and snow and everything may be coming.
I just want to mention a few things. Sutton needs to be more involved more quickly in the game. It almost seems as if Nix forgets about him until like maybe the fourth quarter.
Right.
And so I would work, and I know that teams are saying, John Fox used to say, it all comes up to player matches. He used to say that all the time to me. It's matchups. It's matchups. And he would say it more than he would say, they have skins on the wall. That was another one of his great ones. And they get paychecks like we do. That was John Fox to me. But I think that there are matchups. If Sutton is getting double teamed, then they've got to turn to other people more so. But if it's what's called now in football, beautifully, 50-50 balls,
right,
Sutton's going to beat guys. So if he's getting single coverage, that's where Nix needs to go. I said to you last week, the offensive line has been banged up a bit. Even the All-Pro Walter Payton Man of the Year for the Denver Broncos left the game in the Chargers. There hasn't been any talk about it, but he did have an ankle injury that's been worked on, and you've got to have success out of bowls against Buffalo, because Buffalo doesn't have a great defense.
Yeah.
That is the weakness.
I also think, just as you talk about it, I think of Buffalo coming in here with a little bit more of a gambler mentality. Like, we're going to Denver, we're going to cut it loose, whereas the Broncos are thinking, play it cool, play it cautious, and close to the vest, and that can work against you, especially what I'm talking about, just trying to get your quarterback animated. And if you're telling the quarterback, if everything you tell a quarterback starts with don't, that's not playing with confidence.
I just think you have to get something out of a tight end.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that you've got to get Sutton involved early in the game. You've got to have the offensive line do the job, run blocking for what is not the best running back team without Dobbins. Defensively, I keep being concerned about they don't get those turnovers that Peyton likes because they play a man defense. You don't get it. You get turnovers over balls that are deflected. You get because a guy is in a zone and sees what's coming from and Josh is a smart quarterback, which is kind of forgotten. I think this is going to come down to a 3-point game like we've seen in most of the playoff games
and most of the Bronco games this year.
And who's going to actually kick a field goal that wins this game? That, to me, 27-24, 28-27.
Just
that's where I see that. I see the Broncos winning because I think the home field is an advantage. That altitude, we saw a team last night in the Steelers playing at home, worn out by the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
They were the ones that were struggling at home in cold, and the team that doesn't normally play in the cold actually had its way with them offensively, even though they had all those turnovers.
Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson, they'll all be here.
Yeah, I really like Tony. Let's go off kilter here a little bit. Tony's getting so much grief because of what he was not doing in the last game and what he was saying, and I think he had a bag. I like Tony. He's both Jim and Tony are friends of mine, and Jim is solid as anybody he could be, but Tony kind of brought him down.
Well,
the past game.
So he'll be harshly judged in Buffalo, Denver, and around the country. And that could be positive, but everyone will be watching these TV games. These 4 games coming up this weekend are going to generate gigantic numbers as they always do.
And a final point on the broadcasting: I had a friend call me and he said, "Do you think they should put Tracy in the Wolfson in the booth and let Tony be on the sidelines?"
Well,
I said, "I don't think CBS is going to pay a guy $18 million to be on the sideline."
No, but we do see in hockey now, Peter McNabb did it. Now we see Mark Rycroft do it, and other broadcasters on the national broadcast like to do the hockey games from right there at the red line in between the benches, and it's a different perspective. You may not see all the X's and O's happen, but you see everything.
Natasha and I, she would work with one of the National Hockey League experts that would be in the box, if you remember when she came to town, and she'd use our studio in the depths of Channel 7, a building that's been bombed, I think, or something.
It's been moved.
It's been down,
It's moved into a pile.
Emily Kaplan, she's one of the ones who said we should file a suit for having to be in our basement. One day we can maybe post photos for everyone to know. We keep bringing it up, and I did for evidence, just to look back on.
That was a great day in my life. I actually went by to watch them tear down Channel 7 because
there were some people cheering.
Yeah, well, they fired me twice. That was the other reason.
Woody was one of them.
I worked in that building for 3 years. It was all good. Hey, let's talk.
Yeah, upstairs.
Yeah. Oh, I was on the second floor. You could see everything. We talk about quarterbacks a lot, and we're talking about Aaron Rodgers last night.
You ever been to Paris?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever go into the catacombs?
Oh, with the skulls and all the...
That's where our studio was.
It wasn't that nice. It was a little less finished than the catacombs.
We called it the tombs down there. And we brought across skeletons from former weather people at Channel 7.
That's where they go. Hey, the Aaron Rodgers has entered the portal. The question is he just portaling on his way out to retirement? Or, I thought it was most interesting to watch him last night. And the Texans just battered him. And it was, Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers had no fun this weekend playing playoff games. Rodgers, though, has become in the last few years, of course, a mercenary quarterback. And when he left the field last night, I get the feeling, he was alone. That wasn't like he had his teammates or his buddy or somebody there with him. He was a lonely figure, and he's earned that. He's been a guy, an aloof guy, a difficult guy. A lot of people, teammates and opponents, have talked about him in less than flattering ways. He can still throw it a bit. He just can't move. He can't throw it as far, and I'm not sure he's the magic man anymore.
I do study history, and there was a history of him possibly coming to Denver. They hired his offensive coordinator to be the coach here, and there was talk that instead of Russell Wilson, they were going after Aaron Rodgers.
Right. This is Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, and I have a feeling of we saw this in John Elway at the end. He was the MVP against the Atlanta Falcons, but he still didn't have quite the same zip on the ball. He couldn't use really his legs and his feet like he did before, and that happened with Peyton Manning. We saw it with Aaron Rodgers last night, that if he had come to Denver, they wouldn't be in this position. That they didn't draft Josh Allen, that they did draft Paxton Lynch, that they did have a string of coaches come through here, 3, that weren't successful, that it just took a long while to get to where they needed to get back to being the Denver Broncos of the Peyton Manning. Because Peyton was not, even when they won Super Bowl 50, Peyton was on fumes.
So that's what I'm looking at, because you talk about John Elway in the Super Bowl beating the Falcons and Peyton Manning in Super Bowl 50, doing just enough to help the Broncos win that championship. And you look at Rodgers last night, and you look at some of the older quarterbacks, and I think if you played the Super Bowl in week 4, they'd be fine. But the Super Bowl is like week 22. By then, whatever they had in the tank in August has been spent on the way to December and January. And, Rodgers, it seems like he had told the ESPN crew in their pre-game meetings that this was probably going to be his last game. So we're likely going to hear that. Mike Tomlin, also with an uncertain future. He would be another guy, though, who would jump into, if he is leaving, which way it goes, who knows, but if he leaves the Steelers, he would also go to the top of many teams' wish list to be their next coach.
Maybe Baltimore?
Yeah, they could switch. Harbaugh, go to Pittsburgh.
Because they've played like 44 times, haven't they, against each other?
18 years one and 19 years the other.
Yeah. And I told you before we went on the air, if I were, that's why I'm not an NFL, one of 8,000 reasons I'm not an NFL coach, because if I were the former Baltimore coach and I had my choice of 7 different places, which he will, I'd go to Miami just because I'd like to have a nice house down there and the weather would be nice all the time.
So John Harbaugh, it sounds like the Giants really want him to come there. Whether or not, I don't know if they know Tomlin will or won't be available. But, the jobs are always tricky, because I tend to think the most difficult job to take with a terrific upside is the Raider job, because that kid, the Indiana quarterback, is going to give you a lot of latitude. And I think they've talked about the last few years, the number 1 draft pick quarterback has got his coach fired before the end of the season. It happened this year with Tennessee and Cam Ward, that if you pick number 1, you get your quarterback, you're going to be 1-8, and they're going to run you out. But if you're the Raiders, they're in a pretty good spot. You have salary cap issues. Every team does. But you get a rookie quarterback on his salary, and you can pay a coach anything you want. Go get the guy you want.
After we've seen the first round, we haven't seen the 2 teams that are number 1 seeds, the Broncos and the Seahawks. Where would you stand today on best forget the Seahawks and the Broncos for a moment. What's the best team you've seen?
It's funny. I don't think it shook up that much watching the games this weekend. So it's hard to evaluate the Seahawks and the Broncos without having played this week. The Seahawks have been a much steadier ride over the last month or so than the Broncos have been. So I'd put them slightly ahead of Denver. As far as the teams that played, I think we expected the Rams to throw a haymaker and nail Carolina, and that turned into a struggle. So I think you take them down a peg. The 49ers, I don't know what they have left. I mean, they keep, throwing another rod every time they change gears.
And every time I see Christian McCaffrey get the ball, I think about him running up and down the hill at Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Because that's what he does when he's not hurt. So he's injured a lot.
So is it the Patriots? The quarterback looks really good, and he hasn't played great competition yet, and that doesn't take anything away from it. But their defense, they've shredded the Chargers. They look great. Houston, if C.J. Stroud had played well, you'd like to say Houston because their defense dictated. But, as we talked about all year, all these teams have flaws. All these teams have strengths. There's no clear number one team in the National Football League. What are your thoughts?
I think the Seahawks are as close to being that team as possible.
But if they had to go on the road, would you feel, they're good enough to win on the road, but playing up there, it's like the Broncos. That's a big advantage.
The Texans fell last night for me, who I thought was going to be the best team of the AFC, because Stroud, since he was injured and they lost to the Broncos, he hasn't been the same quarterback, even though they've won all those games.
Right.
But he struggled at quarterback, and they've been so dependent on their defense, much like the Broncos.
Yeah.
So I kind of brought them not out of first place in the AFC, but low first place. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, well, it's also you get into matchups. So,
and I was watching the Patriots so closely because we've sat here all year long, people, including myself, have thought, they're really not that great. They can't be that great. Well, they could be.
Yeah.
They could be.
Well, that's going to be, I think, a fascinating matchup, the next game for them with Houston and New England.
Because I was hoping, from my viewpoint, I was hoping that they'd get somebody like the Chargers or the Steelers. They got the Bills. And then I was hoping they'd get the Patriots here. I don't know that you want the Patriots back here, which has happened in the past. And the Broncos did beat them with Peyton Manning. But, again, that team looks extremely good so far in the AFC. And then in the NFC, we still do have to watch the Seahawks. And the other teams really don't, Bears, I'm not.
The Bears have a tough test this week. We'll see, but I thought Brandon McManus and the Packers kept shoving that game into the Bears' lap. It was amazing all that had to happen, not by the Bears, but for the Bears. And they did make the plays that
I'm laughing at you. Yeah, I'm laughing at you because we say Josh Allen and the Bills. We'll say May and the Patriots, and you're saying Brandon McManus.
Yeah, and the Packers. Yeah, yes. Well, it's like Gladys Knight and the Pips, without Gladys Knight. So let's talk about the college football championship game in a minute. But first, I want to remind you about our sponsor here on After the Horn, our friends at American Financing. I want to remind you that if you're a homeowner, it is time to get rid of the debt from last year and start 2026 with a stress-free start. The Fed is dropping rates again, and American Financing can access your home's equity at rates in the low fives, which is a fraction of what you might be paying for credit cards. Borrowers are saving an average of $800 a month, and that's about the same as getting a $10,000 raise. Also, you might even be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. There are also no upfront fees, and you could close in as fast as 10 days. So give them a call at 855-581-5828 today, or visit AmericanFinancing.net/green. American Financing, Colorado's home for home loans. All right, Woody, we get ready for national championship game. I think it's astounding that the game in Miami with the Miami Hurricanes has them as a 7.5-point underdog to the University of Indiana, and I think that tells you a lot about Indiana.
Yeah, we've been talking about the Broncos in the home field and how that could be the difference in the game, really, against what we see from the Bills this week. However, as you just said, Miami's playing at home, and there doesn't seem to be any home field advantage because I think everybody in the United States, maybe around the world, on all the ships that are in the sea between here and Venezuela, that people think that have finally figured out Indiana is for real. I think there was still a 20%, 25% people said, nah.
Yeah, let's see.
They are for real. That is a great college football team.
They're the most impressive team in football, period, this year. And what happened, I think, like you said, is people liked the story. They had a soft Big Ten schedule, so they cruise right on through. They're unbeaten like they were a year ago. Okay, let's see how good you really are. And then they beat Ohio State. But then, they've waxed everybody since. And that coach, somebody's going to chase him with some money. And he's a different cat, Curt Cignetti. But if you're the Raiders and you're going to draft his quarterback with number 1 pick, would you think about saying, here's our checkbook, just put in a number you like, and you can be the new coach of the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, I think I told you and Ron a couple of weeks ago that he's not like him, but he has a personality that is unlike any other quarterback to come along since Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
In terms of
Mendoza, yeah.
Just in overcoming the neighborhood. If I want to put, he's in the middle of everything. He was being interviewed 3 times by the same network, ESPN, that I used to work for, that he was going from sideline to, let me go on the show that's back in Bristol. Now I'm going to do the one where I get he is such a personality, but he's such a really, really good quarterback that even though they were blowing out the team, he wouldn't let his younger brother come play in the game until there was about 10 seconds left. Guess what? Home field advantage. The quarterback brothers for Indiana, live about 8 miles away from the stadium.
Yeah, he wanted to play at Miami. Miami didn't have time for him. Good luck. So I think of all these college football teams that had the quarterback, kind of came from nowhere. Whether it's Doug Flutie at BC or Drew Brees at Purdue or John Elway in Stanford, and you're a one-man band, and eventually you run into the team that says, yeah, we're not going to let you beat us. Indiana, on the other hand, shows up and beats you at every turn. They've won almost every play of these last 2 games. They are dictating and dominating, running the line of scrimmage, running the football, killing people on defense. And Mendoza makes a lot of it happen, but they are so impressive. I think we're going to talk about it on our betting show. I think that's a really hard line, because if you think you're going to get Miami at home as good as they're playing, and you're going to say, and I get 7.5 points, how do you pass?
And there were questions going into the game that Indiana had with Oregon about which quarterback here is going to be the best and will be drafted number 1. That was ended pretty quickly when Moore struggled. Interceptions, fumble.
Pressured,
Mendoza,
though. They made a lot of that happen.
Yeah, and Mendoza is qualified to be number 1, qualified to go to the Raiders. Is that the spot for his personality?
Yeah.
I'm not certain about that, although that franchise had a guy called the Snake that had a personality that I really enjoyed.
He would have had a good time in
Kenny
Vegas.
Stabler we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to be a close game. I don't think Indiana's going to blow the Hurricanes out. No pun intended. Weather pun is intended there. But because they are playing at home, they should be comfortable. That is a hard, tough team that you're playing in Miami, but Indiana's so good. They're better than Big Ten teams, I think, that have won previously.
They look like they can do whatever they want. They can run it, they can throw it, They can stop.
And I think their coach, even though he's got that staid look on his face, he finally opened up a little bit at the end of the game, talking about wanting to have a beer, and he did smile a couple of times. But he's been a success everywhere he's been.
But do you think of
James Madison?
Do we know him well enough to project him, like I do, into the NFL because of the bottomless well of money? And maybe Indiana will offer him the same thing to stay or whatever. But do you project him like, coaching college nowadays is more like the pros, but that used to be a big difference.
I think two things. One, he acts and coaches like a guy he actually coached under, and that's Nick Saban. And he kind of reminds you of that in the way his appearance is on the sideline. He never seems happy about what's going on. But two, if I'm a guy like that, and I'm not, but I look at all the college coaches that have failed in the NFL. And if you were to look at those numbers over the years that I've covered NFL, that's 40, 50 years, that people like Steve Spurrier just died on the vine.
Lou Holtz, Nick Saban.
Going on.
Yeah.
I just think that you found your spot. Saban went to Miami and was a failure.
It's funny, though, because as you say it, I think the gap between the college game and the pro game then was enormous. The player thing was different. And now the college game isn't all that different from the National Football League. It might be better because there's no real salary cap. You just pay more players.
But I think as a college coach, and I think about Urban Meyer, and I've known him over the years, Urban Meyer was a total failure. He didn't last through the year on the NFL stage, and went back to college, and that wasn't even a real success for him. I think that there's such a different relationship between the players and the college players still, despite what we're seeing with the portal here in Boulder, Colorado, all over the country, 33% of the players entered the portal this year. They still listen to the coach.
Yeah, ultimately.
In the NFL, they don't really listen to the coaches. You can't have the same kind of – and I think that's – I've tried to figure out over the years why it doesn't work for anybody. The Chargers had a guy that coached national championships at Oklahoma, and he failed miserable. And, I mean, you go down the line, you mentioned Lou Holtz was a complete waste of time. In
Great college football coach.
And Spurrier was.
Yeah.
I mean, but Spurrier, having been an NFL player, still failed as a coach in the pros.
So the portal is busy here in Colorado. I think a lot of people were shocked, or at least taken aback by Jordan Seaton, the big left tackle for the Buffs, announcing that he's in the portal, and he's obviously off to greener pastures, more money, and likely a better chance to play for a national championship. So we'll see what happens there. But quarterbacks are moving around. Lane Kiffin is, I'm sure, waving money at all sorts of people. But Seaton, that's a big problem for Prime and the Buffs.
I've maintained, having watched the Buffs since they'd played in Liberty Bowl when I was a columnist at the Memphis Commercial Appeal, and beginning then to now, I think it's such a tough place to recruit to because black players come in, and I'm being straight about this, and they don't feel very comfortable for the most part unless they're from around here, like Philip Lindsay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he grew up here. He still loves Boulder and every part of it. But I just think when you now have a portal situation, it's going to be more difficult. Deion can get players to play for him. But to get into Boulder,
get him to come, but get him to stay is a different thing.
I think that's going to be a real problem because they're having more exiting than they are.
Some people are saying that the CU's actually doing pretty well in the portal. I mean, I can never judge that. I don't look at tape on defensive tackles from SMU and stuff like that. But if they are, but it's a different pressure mounting in and around the CU football program because the size of the commitment to be in the game currently in college football is a giant financial commitment. And Sean Keeler wrote about it with some of the boosters saying that nobody's got any loyalty as far as you write a kid a check, he's there for a year and then he's gone.
Yeah, Mark Kisla said the same thing in regard to the two columnists writing about, they don't have the backing that Texas Tech has, for instance. Spending tens and tens of millions of dollars.
So
on
can
players.
you stay in the game? Should you stay in the game? Like, is there, what echelon are you in? Because if you're not in the top 25, top 40 teams in college football, what are you doing?
Well, one of the previous athletic directors decided that they go to the Pac-12 because Colorado has so many alumni that are based in California. And people come to Colorado and then they go back to where they came from.
Yeah.
They don't stay here for the most part. Although there's a base, and I don't want to get people saying, "Well, you're wrong." I'm a CU graduate, but they come here and then they go back. Like if you go to Tennessee, where I went to school, you go to Tennessee and you stay there.
Right.
You're not going to Colorado, although there's a group of about 8 people in Colorado. I think that makes it more difficult for them to have the alumni support financially because those people are not based in Colorado. I don't know whether I'm making sense, but except to me, that they had Jack Vickers for a long period of time that brought in coaches and paid coaches, and there's one guy.
Fairbanks, right? You brought in Chuck Fairbanks, yeah.
Yeah. There's one guy in Colorado that is a CU alum who is worth a ton of money, but he's the only one. If you look at the top 10 richest people in Colorado, none of them are Colorado graduates.
Right.
So you're not having that base of billionaires, and I know billionaires are talked about in this country. They don't have the large money people that even Colorado State has. Colorado State has someone who's in the top 5 that basically paid for much of the stadium up there. And
you're talking about Pat Stryker, but it's got to feel like a good investment, though. Like you have to feel like if I'm going to write a big check, we're going to go 9-2, and we're going to play in a big bowl game, or we might weasel into the playoff, or the playoffs expanding. But if you're looking at it and going, I'm just going to drop in a bunch of money here and go sit for 5 Saturdays out at Folsom Field, watch the team go 4-8. That's not great.
I've talked to two. The reason why I have said some of the things. Two prominent Denver attorneys who went to school at CU, and they said it's not worth us to invest the kind of money that we did for a couple or 3 years because you don't have. I just heard the basketball coach at Colorado talking about how difficult it is for them to fill what is not a big arena up there, 11,000 seats. And he said, we've had serious problems. One game this year that's come close to being a major crowd. And talking to guys I believe in who have invested in it, they said, we still don't know how long Deion's going to be there. We don't know that players will stay in Colorado for 2 or 3 years. One of them said to me, okay, Lewis is going to be a good quarterback, maybe a great quarterback. Yeah. Is he going to stay if he has a good year? Is he going to want to go to a place?
There's been that arc of excitement with Deion where it was vertical. And it is not only flattened, it has started to descend now where people are wondering, what is the long-term look? Because I think, obviously you had Shedeur and Travis, and you could beat anybody with that team. You weren't favored in every game, but you could beat anybody. And then it's become, it's unraveled on the field at times. Games where they're getting blown out, like where they have theoretically all the Louis Vuitton luggage that he brought with him, and yet they're getting smoked.
That's why I say to you that schools like Georgia, Florida are not winning the national championship. Georgia's won it recently. Yeah. But they have a base of people that live in Georgia and Florida that are going to pile millions of. We see that in Texas, and we see that in California.
It's more of a religion or a
Colorado. Yes, if you are a Colorado-based person like you and I that weren't born here, we have allegiances to other places.
Sure.
And so if I'm Mark Cuban and I own the Dallas Mavericks, but I went to Indiana, he has done a lot for Indiana, but he's from somewhere else when Indiana has Mark Cuban and the University of Texas has 18 Mark Cubans.
There are plenty of them. So let's stay with money and move to the NBA because the Nuggets go to New Orleans. off of another one of these wins they've had during this injured and sick time that they've had a difficult time patching together lineups. Peyton Watson helps them beat Milwaukee. Peyton Watson's named the Player of the Week in the NBA's Western Conference. Peyton Watson hasn't got paid yet, is coming up on his deal, but he's taken the minutes he's gotten, which he was playing when everyone was healthy too, but he's now becoming one of those linchpin guys as they try to get through the non-Jokic weeks. But everyone I talk to says that the Nuggets can't pay him. They get stuck again like they did back when Bruce Brown they couldn't afford Bruce Brown after the championship year.
He's not Kobe Bryant. And we're talking about Peyton Watson. I wrote a major column about him in his rookie year. And what I figured out about him is he was going to take 3 or 4 years. And again, I'm not comparing him to Kobe Bryant, but Kobe Bryant came in the league and out of high school and averaged 8 points a game in his first year.
Yeah.
And it took him 3 or 4 years. Peyton Watson played like 8 games.
Yeah.
He was a pandemic baby, basically.
Right.
He was going through that period of time, and he didn't really see a lot of action, high school even.
UCLA, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like a 6-point-a-game guy at UCLA. I think he's finally, 2 things have happened. One is he's finally figured it out. And number 2 is he had to figure it out because it's a year he is coming up where he can get his contract. So I think those 2 things have inspired him. And the third is that he's got to do something because they got nobody else that really, with this, Gordon is back, but he's on a time limit,
yeah.
if you will. But Watson can probably, when they get the full team back, he's not going to have the same sort of strength on the court that he has now. But he's going to have so much strength during the offseason because there are a lot of teams that are going to want him. I find it funny, we're talking about him, that the Nuggets traded away Michael Porter Jr., and he may be traded again in another 2 or 3 weeks. And I went, he's the best player that they've got on Brooklyn.
Well, yeah, but Brooklyn, as always, it's next year for Brooklyn. So this is an interesting way to look at the Nuggets right now and the Calvin Booth, Michael Malone, and how that thing ended with the nuclear option. Josh Kroenke saying he let it get out of hand because we're starting to see the guys that Calvin Booth picked that Michael Malone didn't play. They weren't playing here for David Adelman until everyone got hurt either. But Zeke Naji, who people have considered a disaster, not only as they drafted him, but now recently have given him a new contract. Jalen Pickett, Peyton Watson. I mean, all these guys that Calvin Booth saw something in. And, you said Peyton Watson was not like everybody was dying to draft Peyton Watson. He was a speculative pick. But will history be kinder to Calvin Booth because of the way these guys are playing right now?
Let me take another side to that. I'm reading last night. There is a expert NBA opinionist who said the Midway executives of the year are 2 guys with the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, but they didn't. I mean, they did do the work, of course. But these guys, some of these guys have been sitting over there, 6 seats down from Michael Malone and David Adelman for 2 or 3 years. And on garbage time maybe, but these guys haven't been seeing the floor. And when they get out on the floor, it looks like, these guys are pretty good.
Well, I'm going to get up at a press conference, if Michael Malone ever has another one, and say, you did a great job, Coach. Don't feel bad that you didn't use those players, that you didn't win another championship. You had such a great year when you won a championship by doing it your way. Is that
Jacksonville?
Is that getting through to everybody?
Yeah.
No, but Michael Malone did what had to be done at that point. That I've got to just use these guys up. So
he lived minute to minute.
Exactly.
And the GM was living month to month, year to year.
And so then you don't win again, and you have Murray hurt. Jamal Hurry. Hurry back,
yeah.
Jamal Hurry. Once again, it's got he plays with injuries all the time. But I think that that Malone was what was right then, and Adam is what's right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I could see that that argument.
He's working with 4 or 5 guys that never got to play, and he's been forced to play them, and he has managed to be an architect of an entirely different team than the Denver Nuggets were a month and a half
built
ago.
To be. No,
yeah.
he's patching it together very well. He's asking guys to play above their weight, and they are. And I think they're enjoying it. I think the guys who aren't playing are also enjoying see the guys who don't get to play.
Well, and I think not only Adelman, but we got to give credit to their new coach.
The big man, the big fella.
Yeah, I mean, they're down to the last 5 seconds. It's not Adelman that's talking to the team. It's Jokic is telling
the
guys.
Of players like Peyton Watson who are all in. When he speaks, he is E.F. Hutton. I mean, they are whatever you say because Nikola knows. He's the answer man. It'll be interesting. I don't know that there's a good answer to how they or if they can do any of this going forward because there's only so much time in the day. And when those guys are all healthy, the Nuggets put out a 5-man roster that can win a championship. It's finding time for those next 5 or 6 guys that have all earned it, through December into January now, finding free minutes where they don't have to just play and stand somewhere and wait for Nikola to make a decision, but to play the game. He wants them to play.
Yeah, and I think I told you, Tom, that I think that Oklahoma City was a runaway with the Nuggets being healthy.
Yeah.
I think, if you remember the Nuggets, they played Oklahoma City better than anybody last year.
Almost beat them.
Yeah, came close. Didn't have a bench to.
Well, they barely had starters. They were
so
hurt.
I think it's a team that because we've got 4 guys still hurt, that if they can pull this together for the last 15 games of the season, that there's going to be a struggle because even the Suns are playing well.
No, it's the Western Conference is a
Spurs.
knife fight. It's going to be hard to get out of the West.
So it's going to be not impossible, but it's going to be improbable that they can win a championship because they're going to have to pull all these people together. The guys that are playing now, the guys that are not playing now. But I think it is going to be an interesting playoff run because the West is covered. I mean, you have the Clippers that are playing well now.
Right.
I think what's interesting, twisting the story now to the Avalanche, that their players are talking about, there's a lot of teams playing extremely well in the National Hockey League now. And people, including myself, thought that, oh man, they could run away with another championship this year. The players are saying, there are a lot of people that are right on our heels here.
Well, not right now because they were fighting with Dallas and Minnesota, trying to pull away from them, but they're a dozen points clear of those 2 teams. And then those 2 teams are almost 10 or a dozen points clear of the next group. So, and the Avs even found, another goalie. Trent Miner shows up and pitches a shutout, and it gets them to overtime against the Leafs.
I asked you before we went on the air, I said, how many players are in the Olympics from the Avalanche? And I just considered that it was going to be the most of any National Hockey League team.
No, the third most.
And
they have 8.
You looked it up.
They have 8 players. The Tampa Bay Lightning have 10, and there's another team that has 9. But so they have 10 games now before this Olympic break, and so you wonder how this stretch goes for the Avs at this point. How you put the bow on what's been an incredible first half of the season. I mean, are you going to race to the line? We shall see, because if they race to the line, I think the break will be fine with them. If they play great hockey over these next couple of weeks and get to the Olympic break playing great, then half the team gets to rest, and then they can come back and go about finishing the job. Because the way they've played this year, Woody, they put themselves in a terrible spot. If you're this good, it's the whole thing or nothing.
I want to touch base on the pun intended there on a couple of other local issues in Colorado and Denver. Three. Lindsey Vonn has a chance of winning another medal.
She wins again.
We thought maybe, she's been inducted into the Colorado Hall of Fame,
Right.
Skiing Hall of Fame. I thought her rest of her life would be just, hanging out in Vail
Commercials
and
and-
doing that. And she's won 2 races. And so that's an interesting aspect.
Yeah, she
of
might be the
Olympics.
Olympic favorite in the women's downhill right now, the way
Sure.
she's racing.
And speaking of women in sports, I think that 90% of people in Colorado don't know that maybe the best soccer player ever to come out of Colorado is coming back to Colorado. And the Rapids have spent, 25 years? They've won one championship, but the Rapids are trying to repurpose themselves. But the new women's major soccer league has brought the best player ever to come out of Colorado back here.
We knew her as Lindsay Horan. Now
Yeah.
she's Lindsay Heaps, but she's really excited, of course, to be part of the Denver Summit. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. I think the Rapids can chase all they want in the MLS, but they're chasing the Summit now. The Summit haven't played yet. The Summit are going to have a full building. The Summit are going to put at least Lindsay Heaps and other recognizable players on the field. You think of maybe Mallory Pugh-Swanson or Sophia Smith. I forget her now married name, but it's like there are Colorado women who will put people in seats, and the Summit, they're going to be a story. And if the Rapids are thinking of changing their colors, they might want to get lined up with the Summit.
Yeah. I want to address another issue that I saw is beginning to heat up, that the players in Major League Baseball want nothing to do with the salary cap.
Yep.
We know that. Rich teams want nothing to do with the salary cap. I have this thought that the person that has ruined baseball in Colorado may be on a way to trying to ruin Major League Baseball.
Well,
and you get it. I don't know that everybody listening or watching me are saying this, but it's interesting that the same guy that owns the Rockies is going to be basically in charge for the Major League executives and owners to fight the players over the bargaining conditions in contract.
it's affected this off season in the way I think players are more inclined to sign their deals now, because I think most people are forecasting next year to being a lockout, a stoppage of some sort, that there will not be baseball.
And who's going to be on the owner side?
It'll be Dick Monfort, at least as one of the heads of the negotiating arm for
He's
Major
even
League
admitted
Baseball.
when he made the changes that one of the reasons he did it, in addition to being my age, basically, a little younger, but that he wanted to slow down. But he said he's going to spend the next year working on the new contract with the Baseball Association.
I wonder,
Players
though, how the
Association.
rest of MLB owners feel about it. They want him to fight that fight, and nobody wants to go chase the Dodgers payroll. I mean, there are 4 or 5 teams that can, but I think most of the owners will back it up. The Major League Baseball Players Union has always been the strongest union of all the pro sports unions. Is it anymore? Do you think?
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I wonder if they are. We also have one other baseball note that just came in. Just want to let you know. Nolan Arenado's on the move again. He's leaving the St. Louis Cardinals. He's going to become an Arizona Diamondback. So we'll be seeing him in the National League West again.
More often.
Yeah.
I mean, he would make one trip in with the Cardinals, and now he'll be making, 6 trips in with the Diamondbacks.
every few weeks.
The interesting aspect of that for me is that the Rockies are finally not going to have to be paying him anymore. I mean, this past season, he was like 3rd on their 4th highest paid player on the Rockies.
Well, and it wasn't his best season last season. It was the first time we'd really seen him start to struggle or play more average at the plate anyway than we remember him here.
I wasn't aware of that, but they've also, I think, hired acquired one of their other former stars, and the Diamondbacks are putting on a show trying to become a factor again, which they were, what, 3 years ago?
Tell you what, you think about trying to compete against, the Yankees and Red Sox in the National League East, and it's always a hurricane of money. And the National League West, that's like swimming up whitewater, trying to catch the Dodgers and the Padres and the Giants, and now the Diamondbacks. Seriously, so the tough gets going harder all the time. Oof.
I wanted to do, because she sat quietly and politely there, but we started this show with talking about the Broncos, and you as a fan, lifelong with your dad, how do you look at this game with the Buffalo Bills on?
Oh, well, that's part of why I didn't chime in. If I keep quiet, that's primarily, it's either because I'm super upset about what you're saying and I disagree so strongly that I don't want to get involved, or I'll never shut up about it, or I completely agree. And I think that you guys were on the right track, that everything is honestly pretty evenly matched, and that the Broncos will be able to pull through because they are so evenly matched, and they're both teams that are kind of fourth quarter teams. They're tied for the most fourth quarter comebacks this season. So I think it'll come back down to the last minute, and it being a home game, that like 3 or so points that it could potentially be a one-score game.
Do you go to games?
Every single one.
You go to every single game?
Yes.
And have forever?
Yes, my whole life.
Does the team know you're there? Did they react to you?
Of course. Well, they can definitely hear us. You were talking about sound and crowd, and I'm like, no matter what, we're in charge. We're controlling our section. We're South Stands. We're making sure people stand up, get loud, get crazy. Oh yeah, we pride ourselves on that. Big time.
You didn't go over the mountain though. You said it's going to be close, but what does being close mean? What do you think is going to be the final score?
Oh, probably like a 27-24.
That sounded like what I said.
With the good guys?
Yeah.
With the good guys winning?
Yeah.
They're both good guys. I will say, though,
who's going to be on the winning side?
Hopefully the Broncos. I think the Broncos, again, if anything, just because of home field advantage, although, like, I would like to see the Bills go all the way, though, if it can't be us. I will put that out there.
And
that would be why.
Saturday afternoon. Natasha, enjoy the game.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking a little bit more football on the weekend betting edition of After the Horn. But as always, we thank you for taking the time out to join us. And if you want to reach Ron, well, if you reach Ron, let us know where he is.
He's on assignment.
Ron is on assignment. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you back here again next week.